Woo. Coming up, primetime news anchor Elizabeth Vargas takes a break from 2020. We'll tell you why.
Plus, you won't believe what Sharon Osbourne had to say about the ladies of The View. My goodness, Sharon.
And reality TV royalty, Chrissy and Mr. Jones stop by to discuss life on the small screen. And of course, the beautiful model Damaris Lewis. She's going to be stopping by to discuss life on the catwalk.
Wow. She's a stunner.
Wow.
Yeah.
We got some eye candy on the show today. I can't wait.
Hi, I'm Mike Sargent, and this is Arise on Screen.
Dead or alive, you're coming with me.
3 remakes of iconic 80s movies all open this week. ROBOCOP, About Last Night, and Endless Love. How do they stack up against the originals? We'll give you the lowdown today on Arise on Screen.
What I want to be when I grow up, I want to be a musician.
The new documentary, The Whole Gritty City, is a film about New Orleans, the power of music, and how it can transform and even save young lives.
Came straight about the gutter, saved from hell. I'm a dog, I was raised in jail, now I'm out on bail.
The life of rapper Tupac Shakur is finally coming to the big screen. After falling off the project 2 years ago, director John Singleton has finally closed the deal to make the film. All this and more on Arise on Screen. Hello, I'm Mike Sargent, and welcome to Arise on Screen, your global home for films both on screen and behind the scenes. So let's get to it. First, with this week's box office winners, the Lego Movie tops the box office this week with over $80 million, followed by ROBOCOP that just came out this Wednesday, Monuments Men, Ride Along, and Frozen still in the top 5 at the number 5 spot.
How much money you made?
I don't know, 70,000 last month.
Wolf of Wall Street co-stars Leonardo DiCaprio and Jonah Hill are re-teaming for a film about accused Olympic bomber Richard Jewell, a security guard at the time who was falsely accused of planting a bomb at the Centennial Olympic Park during the 1996 Summer Olympic Games. Jewell was fully exonerated following an FBI investigation. The film, now in development, will star Hill as Jewell and co-star DiCaprio. The producers of Katherine Heigl's new film, Jenny's Wedding, hope to raise $150,000 by the end of March to finish their film. Turning to fans, they've launched an Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign, an ever-increasing trend of filmmakers both large and small as an alternative to traditional film financing.
Man, why you sweating me? You're my only son, and I'm not gonna lose you to no bull.
Director John Singleton earned writing and directing Oscar nods for the 90s film Boys in the Hood. Now, he signed on to rewrite, produce, and direct the as-yet untitled Tupac Shakur biopic. Singleton directed Shakur in 1993's Poetic Justice opposite Janet Jackson. Shakur, a rapper and up-and-coming actor, died in 1996. The Fashion Force was with the Rodarte designers at the recent New York Fashion Week when they presented 5 stunning gowns incorporating classic artwork from the Star Wars films. Rodarte designers Kate and Laura Malevi said the collection was inspired by memories of the way the designers were dressed as children in the early 80s. And they said, quote, "We couldn't have done a collection like this and not included Star Wars. Those films represent for us a time when anything was possible." And in festival news, in her first screen role since winning the Best Supporting Actress Oscar for Precious in 2009 and losing over 80 pounds, Monique has joined Isaiah Washington in the adaptation of Larry Dupulchan's novel Blackbird, a coming-of-age story about a Mississippi choir boy coming to terms with his sexuality. The movie is the closing night film of the Pan-African Film Festival, which ends Sunday, February 16th. Today, I'm joined by international film critic, filmmaker, artist from Italy, Chiara Spagnolo Gabaldi, and by entertainment journalist, film critic, Valli Hart.
Hi.
How are you, ladies? Welcome
Hi.
back, both of you.
Excited.
Yes,
Excited.
thanks
Well, this
for
is
having
quite
us.
this is Valentine's Day weekend.
Yes.
And there's a lot of romantic movies coming out, and it's kind of a retro 80s thing going on here. So I have a question now. Favorite romantic films of all time? Because this is a time where, you know, traditionally romantic movies make a lot of money. So
I must say these movies out in theaters have very much disappointed me. So I wouldn't, recommend to get that magic sparkle with these movies. I'd suggest to go back to some old movies.
Okay, so what are your favorites?
I really like Richard Curtis's movies. So Love Actually, and most recently he did About Time. So
Those two of your top romantic films of all time?
probably.
What about you, Valli?
A couple of very different options. I love Thomas Crown Affair, the remake.
Okay.
Love that. I think it's smart, sexy, fun, edgy. And I also like Princess Bride, just because it's twists and it's unexpected and it's not plodding along to the same tired conclusion.
Okay. Well, I of course will have to default to Some Like It Hot, because that's still probably my favorite romantic movie of all time.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys think about these new movies we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
And it's an interesting weekend. Let's see who is going to win the box office. And we will be right back. When we come back, a look at a remake that I predict will be Kevin Hart's second $100 million hit. We review About Last Night next on Arise on Screen.
No idea what I'll do. You better make it count, because you won't get a second.
I think that people in America do care about what happens throughout the world.
Global warming is probably something that has to be addressed sooner rather than later.
From Somalia and the genocide there, and that's something people don't know about. They have no idea the brevity of that situation.
The first thing I think about when I think of Africa is like war and famine and disease.
And right now with the tsunami that happened, or the earthquakes in, Japan, we always look out for other people.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
He broke up with me.
Get out of here.
His day. See, my parents are coming to town, and I'm like, I want to meet them. And he's like, no way. And I'm like, why not? And he goes, because you're not Jewish.
He's Jewish?
That was a scene from About Last Night, which stars Kevin Hart, Michael Ealy, Regina Hall, and Joy Bryant. It's an update of the 1980s romantic comedy of the same name, but this time with an all-black cast. Welcome back to Arise on Screen. With me in the studio are film critics Chiara Spagnolo Gabaldi.
Hi, Mike.
And Valli Hart. So I'm going to ask you first, Chiara, what did you think of this movie? Because you didn't like it, while I know Valli and I did.
Okay. I thought it was just too much over the top. I'm getting a little fed up of seeing Kevin Hart framed in these very caricature-like roles. He's been shouting and using very coarse language, and I find him vulgar. I don't find him funny at all. And I think his part with Rebecca Hall with Regina Hall, I apologize, tries to actually give more of the romantic nuance to the other side of the story, to the other couple. But it's just way too much.
Didn't work for you?
No, not at all. It was irritating for me.
Okay. Valli, you had a completely different opinion.
I think it'll do really well at the box office. I would caution people to be careful about who they see it with, because the language is very graphic, much more so than the original that came out in '84, was it? So the audience was laughing many times. I really felt like Kevin Hart kind of had this role written for him, that they must have had him in mind when they wrote it. And really, I think Kevin and Regina kind of stole the spotlight from what would have been the main characters because they had far more colorful characters.
Okay. Well, I actually, because I've seen the original now, and I didn't see it before I saw this, I thought this was great. I like this a lot. As a matter of fact, I saw this before Ride Along came out. And I liked this so much, then I saw Ride Along and I thought, it's okay, it was okay. But what I liked about this is, and I haven't seen the play, but I've read about the play, I like that it spoke about gender politics. It was, I thought, the changes that they made the film work a lot better. I thought Kevin Hart was great. I thought the chemistry between him and Regina Hall was very, very believable. I liked just about everything about this movie.
But it played a lot of cliches and of gender politics.
Well, you know, I didn't think it so much played cliches because the film is called, or the play is called Sexual Perversity, and I thought what it touched upon and really went into is, what is that sexual perversity? It's how we get into relationships today, where you have sex first, and now the stakes are so high, now the relationship's gotta work out. And I felt that that was really well explored in this, and I thought the contrast of what happens with Kevin Hart's character and Regina Hall was that they had chemistry. Even though they didn't get along, their oil and water mix was still some kind of chemistry, and they kind of moved into a relationship. Not planning for one, but they found that they got along, and I thought that ultimately they ended up having the better relationship. And I thought it really worked. Now, you didn't buy the chemistry at all between them?
At all.
Okay. Well, we're going to move on to our next film, ROBOCOP, which is another remake or reboot, or in this case, a reimagining of another hit from the 80s. Let's take a look at a scene.
Until today, Thomas King was a convicted felon, wanted for rape, arson, and murder. Here he is, just steps away from two of Detroit's finest. These two officers are completely unaware of the monster in their midst. And then, in 60 seconds, I repeat, just 60 seconds, Detective Murphy brings him down.
Now, I'm going to have to go first this time because I love the original ROBOCOP. And what I liked about it was that all good science fiction to me has something to say about society, has something to say about the human condition. I thought it was very insightful in terms of how it used TV and the kind of world we live in. And this one, though it's updated, I thought actually was probably one of the better updates I've seen, in that the drones and the robotics and the things that we're seeing now, 25 years ago, that was science fiction. Now, it's not so much science fiction. So I'm going to ask you, Valli, what did you think of this movie?
I thought the tying in of the drones and the technological things was far more believable. We're just a step away from that. That was solid. I didn't feel like the romance or the emotional was as solid as the original. I would have liked to see one more minute spent on developing the relationship with the wife and the son.
Well, you know, it's interesting, Chiara, you thought that the romance, which they kind of downplayed here, was more introspective. You thought it worked better.
Yes, I did. I mean, I like both of the protagonists. I thought they were very introspective in delivering, what's going on throughout the film. I love Abby Cornish because she doesn't play, too much the emotional side. It comes through. She lives the character. And as regards, the entire political debate, I thought it was very interesting, as we were mentioning the drone policy and also the gun control situation. I thought, it was a very well played maneuver to actually get these topics debated.
Well, it's interesting. I thought there are a couple of things in there. They have this law, this anti-drone law that they've passed, that is what Michael Keaton character is trying to change with all these, robots and the ROBOCOP, and why he leads to creating ROBOCOP. I thought that was very believable. As a matter of fact, so believable that with drones and what's happening, there's talk of, could we have drones on the police force? Could we have them doing things here in America? And I think at some point, like most technological advancements, it's not illegal to do something yet. So people do it, and it's not until there's trouble, then they have to pass a legislation. So I really, really enjoyed it. I thought the love story was minimized because superhero movies are so popular. And I think that they were
want more action.
ROBOCOP was ahead of its time at the time. So you both liked it, didn't like it, worked?
I I liked it, and I think it will do really well, and it will drive video game sales tremendously. I thought it was also a commentary on what role does emotion play in what we do, because remember the guitar player that had no hand, and he began playing, and then he was cautioned, don't have any emotion or it will send chemicals to your brain and it will screw things up. And he said, I have to have emotion.
Yes. All right, well, we have to move on. We'll be right back. Next, we talk with the filmmakers of a new documentary called The Whole Gritty City, a film about New Orleans, the power of music, and how it can transform and even save young lives. Next on Arise on Screen.
If I was building my own network, it would be for the people, by the people. It would be very diverse. It would be with every culture you can think of.
If I was to start my own news network, it would reflect positive and negative within the continents and the countries around the world.
I think that I would be more looking towards young people.
If I were to build my own news network, it would look like New York City. Old, young, fresh, hip, classic.
If I was to build my own news network, I would just have people from all over who are very connected and diverse.
If I was to build my own news network, my own world network, I would love a correspondent in every country, every location, every city. I mean, it's kind of unrealistic, but how cool would it be to get local stories from the impoverished country, the impoverished city that we don't know about?
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
So what we do is we bring together experts and analysts and thought leaders and CEOs in companies across many industries to not only provide the macroeconomic view, but news everyday people can use.
There's certain news programs that have a Democrat and a Republican, and all they do is, here's the Democrat saying his side and the Republican say, you know, it's a little debate show, but not everybody is a sort of an extremist on one side or the other. People are in the middle a lot more.
Arise News, every culture, every angle.
It was hard and fun and hurtful, very, very hurtful.
The new documentary, The Whole Gritty City, goes behind the scenes with 3 New Orleans marching band directors as they prepare students to march in the Mardi Gras parades. But the real lesson they teach is survival. Welcome back to Arise on Screen. This movie will premiere in the U.S. on CBS Saturday, February 15th at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The film will also stream online at cbsnews.com for 2 weeks after it airs. I recently sat down with co-director Andre Lambertson, and I asked him to explain the tradition of New Orleans marching bands.
It is a historical tradition, right, the marching bands. And Richard Barber, the guy who did the film, part of his fascination was we were actually talking about Louis Armstrong and the musical culture and how that is, you know, is passed forward.
Right.
You know, for me, I'm not a musician, I'm not a band head, but if you mention marching bands to anybody in New Orleans, people are really, they just love music, you know. And to be in a marching band means it's such a symbol of pride. It's such a symbol of pride. I don't think people outside of New Orleans understand that.
You know, you said something earlier about passing forward this tradition, and a lot of the band leaders, it seems to me, or in your film, had been in bands themselves, and it had transformed their lives.
Yeah.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Derek Tabb, when he was a young person, he had ended up in some trouble himself. I think his grandmother had passed, and he said, I had a lot of anger. And it was his band director who kind of took him under his wing.
Oh, okay.
So I think he actually says in part of the film, these streets that you're on, I've been on these same streets.
Yes, he does.
Yeah. The same with Wilbert Rollins, and I mean, he talks about in the film losing, you know, 8 of his friends to either drugs or incarceration. So they were giving something, and they're just trying to pass that forward, you know. And I've said this before, for me, I didn't really understand this. Like, we're just like kind of unpeeling this onion while we were working on the film. You know, it's almost like a tree. You know, it's like a big family.
Right.
The film is less about competition and more about, you know, we know each other. This is about belonging.
And community.
Yeah, and community, mostly about community. So even if somebody dies, like De Niro died, you know, it continues on.
It continues on,
yeah.
right.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
They mentioned something about that.
Yeah.
Now, tell me, one of the things you did is you had the kids shoot themselves with what looked like camera phones.
Yeah.
Why did you do that, and what were you looking to get from them?
Yeah. I mean, I'm really interested in empowering people, right? Because I think a lot of times, you know, sometimes stories come from outside. It's people coming to a community they don't understand. I've done work, you know, different communities around the world. I'm an outsider. So the best I can do is try to get your story, but I can't tell a story the way you can. I can't really put words in your mouth, right? So the idea was actually the places that we couldn't touch is like, you know, we'll give you this equipment and teach you just a little bit, and you'll show us your world.
And they'll tell you their own stories.
Yeah.
From
So
their
there's,
words.
you know, it's an unusual perspective, it's a deeper perspective. And then part of it was just interesting just to see how much creativity the kids have.
How did you get involved with this project?
Richard Barber, who's the co-director, he works at 48 Hours.
Right.
And several years ago, they had done a show that was about 2 high-profile murders, and one of them was a young musician named Daenerys Shavers.
Right.
Right. And putting the show together, Richard saw all the interviews with some of these kids, and he just thought it was amazing who the kids were. You know, could feel the spirit of the kids. And the story is his mom had actually passed, and he had some money. You know, his mom had actually left him some money, and he wanted to do something good with the money, right?
Okay.
This is a really, really positive person. And I've done a lot of work, you know, in communities in this country. And I was interested, but I said to him, I'm interested as long as this isn't boys in the hood.
Right.
Right. As long as we're really talking about maybe the strength of people, or my idea was, basically, just because there's guns and violence and poverty in a neighborhood doesn't mean that there's not joy there.
Having spent years shooting these kids, how did you see these kids transformed from being in the band?
Yeah, well, we were very lucky because 2 of the people in the film, Jazz and Bear, I mean, we shot the film, like I said, in 2007, so we had a premiere in New Orleans, and now, you know, they're like 16 years old. So Bear is this, you know, very tall, handsome guy, and he and Jazz were actually extras in Treme. They had, you know, some parts. So, so I mean, you could just see how strong they were. You know, I think the film is almost just a little slice in their life.
I guess my last question is, what do you hope for people to come away with having seen this film? What is your goal as filmmakers, you and Richard?
Yeah, I think that you get to see strength in unexpected places. You know, I think that a lot of people just think sometimes you see people as victims and you don't really realize how powerful they are. You know, and these guys, to me, I call them human angels. They're doing this work without money, you know, without recognition. So, you know, I just want people to understand there's positive mentorship going on in communities that you don't usually find it.
Thank you very much for coming down and sharing your stories. It's very inspirational, like the film.
Thank you.
And we'll be right back. Coming up, the original starred a very young Brooke Shields, James Spader, and Tom Cruise, and had a mega hit theme song. The remake came out this week. Next up, Endless Love, here on Arise on Screen.
One of the great things about Arise News, it is truly a multicultural global channel that is paying attention to communities of all different kinds, not just here in the United States, not just in Africa, but all around the world, as we're giving a voice to the people that don't traditionally have the kind of a voice that a mass media organization can have. You're getting here at Arise News that you're not going to find at the other networks is a unique perspective, and I think that's part of what Arise is here to do.
I'll get it. Thank God you're here.
Hey, these are for you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. You have a beautiful house.
Amazing, isn't it?
What are you doing here, David? Well, Jade invited me.
Keith invited Sabine. I don't see what the problem is.
The problem is this was meant to be a family trip. I'm sorry, but inviting David was never part of the plan.
He didn't know.
It's fine, David. The more the merrier.
That was a scene from Endless Love. This Endless Love is a second adaptation of the best-selling novel about young love by Scott Spencer. Hi, I'm Mike Sargent, and this is Arise on Screen. With me in the studio are film critics Chiara, Spagnolo, Gabaldi, and Valli Hart. Okay, you thought that this was the perfect cliche, Chiara, this film. So tell me what you thought of this movie.
Well, I wouldn't know, but certainly it has, I mean, it doesn't stand up to the original by Franco Zeffirelli. It was very much polished, and yes, we see the puppy love, the upper-class girl falling in love with the lower-class boy, but it wasn't believable under many aspects. For instance, the two young boys, she and him, aren't believable as teenagers. I mean, they look way too old. So there were many aspects that didn't work out for me. I don't know. Did you feel that?
They're 24 and 25.
Yes.
So they're not.
You know, them looking like teenagers, that's a whole other conversation. But now, what did you think of the movie, Valli? Did you like this one? Did you think it was a cliche?
I tried to like it. I really did. I wanted to like it. But I really felt like it was very superficial. It was pretty pictures and pretty people, but not a real genuine connection. There were a few moments that were nice in there, but not enough to make an entire film.
Well, you know, here's the thing. Romantic films, they all follow the formula. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl back. So you know what's going to happen. You know, it's like any genre. You know in the horror genre what's going to happen, whatnot. So to me, this is a film that fit that. Now, I was wondering what you meant by perfect cliche, because I did find it formulaic. I didn't think it was necessarily cliche, but it was filled with cliches. So I'm also wondering how you felt it held. Did you see the original film as well, Valli? And did you think it held up to the original film, or do you think the original was better?
Neither one of them are.
Neither one of them work for you.
Are really deeply moving for me.
You know, well, the perfect cliche, but that works properly, is Romeo and Juliet, which, you know, is always the star-crossed lovers. And here, again, we have the family opposing this great love affair, which obviously is for family audiences, so there's a happy twist. But, you know, it didn't stand up to other good cliches.
Did you buy it that they would actually have sex for the first time in front of the fireplace in the girls' living room with the parents upstairs?
That was hilarious. That was really
pretty.
I'm like,
yes,
fantastic.
You see that. One of the various aspects that and I was dying to hear the song. The original song, Endless Love. Why didn't they put it back in?
Because it's 2014. Okay, we have to move on. Our next film is Winter's Tale. Winter's Tale is set in a mythical New York City, and it spans more than a century. The film follows the life of Peter Lake, played by Colin Farrell. Lake is abandoned as an infant, adopted, and then turns to a life of crime. Let's take a look at this scene.
Her name was Beverly.
Be your father. What's happening here? That's all, man.
All right, I have to say, this is a movie for me that I wanted it to work. I'm sure a lot of people want this movie to work. Akiva Goldsman, I feel sorry for him. This is a film, like, while he was writing it, his wife died, so this became everything for him. So it's clearly a labor of love. But it just didn't work for me. I felt that one of the biggest problems with it doesn't set up the universe and the rules of the universe enough. So quickly, Valli, what were your thoughts? And did this movie work for you on any level?
I'm interested to say that we just showed the clip that we did because Jennifer Connelly really had a very minor role, and I thought she was flat. She was not the main character that we were following through the whole thing, but I felt like it was a little disjointed. There were warm moments in there that were enjoyable, but then there were vast patches where it was disconnected and it almost felt like several revisions of a screenplay.
And Chiara, you liked the chemistry.
I like the chemistry at the beginning when we're in this period piece setting between Colin Farrell and Jessica Brown Findlay, and they were beautiful together. And I also enjoyed the cheesiness along the way. But when we enter in the second half and we're in 2014, it just disappears and it doesn't work. And also these magical elements kind of drift away. I thought some aspects were interesting, possibly as a philosophical essay, but not as a movie. I mean, it was detached, it was disconnected.
Well, we have to move on, but in birthday news, yesterday was your birthday, wasn't it?
No! This is awesome! Oh my goodness!
Happy birthday!
Thank you so much.
Happy birthday!
Oh my goodness.
You have to make a wish.
Make a great wish.
Yes.
Okay.
Do I have to say it or do I?
No,
it has to be quiet for the wish gods.
Okay.
Oh yeah!
I have to kiss you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Happy birthday!
Thank you, and thank you to everyone at Arise.
Thank you to all the bakers.
Okay.
Oh yes.
Well, I have to say this has been fun. We're going to eat cupcakes soon.
Oh yes.
And thank you very much, Chiara, Spagnolo, Gabaldi.
Grazie.
Oh, grazie. Valli, Dawn, Hart. I seem to get co-hosts with 3 names. That's interesting. Well, I'm Mike Sargent, just one name, and we'll be back next week to talk more movies here on Arise on Screen.